Welcome to our session on recycling and hut making, essentially. So we have the pleasure of two hut making experts.
Uh-uh.
uh, Brian, who's actually a fairly new allotmenteer, he'll be speaking first about the hut that he's made, but I've seen the photos and you would not think that a new allotmenteer had made it. And then Brian's from Budhill Allotments, and then Robin from Queen's Park will be speaking afterwards. So I think that's everything that I need to say. I think I'll just hand over to Brian now to tell us about his allotment experience.
My name's Brian Harvey. I've got a plot in Budhill Allotments. I've had it for about 12, 14 weeks now. My brother got me into joining the allotment. He's had one for about 4 or 5 years, and he took a wee bit of a couple, asked for a little help. So I was off work, decided to go down and help, and decided that I quite like this. It's quite hard work. It's quite rewarding. So I put my name down a few years ago, and they actually gave me an allotment 14 weeks ago. An allotment might be an understatement of what they gave me. A jungle was probably more apt to what it was. It lay derelict for a couple of years, and it was so overgrown that nobody knew where anything was or what anything was. There was no shed, there was no huts, there was no buildings. It was just thousands and thousands of tons of rubbish. And I'm not exaggerating with that. Oh, screen's away. That's the first picture. That's what it looked like first day I walked in. And I felt like walking straight back out again. But I'm quite a stubborn person when it comes to things. And I thought, oh, this needs somebody to clean it up, to at least tidy up. I might not be able to become an allotmentist, if that's the right word, but I can make it look a bit better. And I started work very next day, cleared most of the rubbish away, and then decided I need a shed. I don't know if people realise that a shed, I would think, is probably one of the most important bits of an allotment, because you're out there in all weathers, and I mean all weathers. During the snow there, I went down to allotments and there was always people there. They were always doing something. And then I realised that this is more than just playing games. This is a serious kind of way of living. These people are down there in snow, rain, hail, thunder, lightning, and the sunshine as well. And it's probably nice in the sunshine, but they're dedicated. And I must admit, I think I've now became kind of totally committed to it, because I'm doing every day. If I'm working, I go down after work, and I keep thinking, oh, that's me done for the day. And I never, ever, ever end up having nothing to do. There's something new, there's something different. I decided, I had a look around the allotments. Dennis and George and all the guys that are there are all great guys. They've all got wee, nice wee huts, and I thought, nah, it's not good enough for me. I want a big hut. I want something that I can have as a workshop. I can have somewhere as a plant room. I can somewhere I can sit and have a cup of tea. I can invite people in and give them a cup of tea. Maybe not during COVID, but I should be able to after it. Then I thought, let's start. And then I thought, how am I going to do this? I don't want to be spending thousands of pounds on a hut. So in my head, I decided I wasn't going to use anything that I had to buy. I thought I would find stuff. In the old allotments, we have a car park where people dump their rubbish. I've got contacts with people who work in building sites. I've got 6 brothers, lots of friends, and I started begging and rummaging through their stockpiles. And I'm quite chuffed with how it's turning out. Don't get me wrong, it's not finished yet. I've not got electricity in it yet, which I'm not allowed. I'm only kidding. I've still got a lot to do to it, but it's starting to look a bit homely now. And I'm starting to get a wee bit of ribbon about it being too nice to be an allotment shed. And I take that as quite a compliment. As you can see with this picture, there's beds there now, there's a bit of an allotment there, there's actually a patio area. But that was my wife's doing. She wanted to come down and plant some flowers, but she wouldn't go if she couldn't have somewhere to sit and have her cup of tea. So she's been more the driving force. That's how it looked when I first started. It's changed a wee bit since then. I'll maybe update some of the more photos. There's now a sofa in it, and there's now a jukebox in it, and there's now a fire in it. And the only thing missing is the wee furry dog. You can see the model sitting there. That's actually a mannequin, because we came up with security today. We had a a few young boys that were breaking into huts, and I had this suggestion: I put a mannequin, put a wig on it, and sit at the window. And for some reason, it seems to work. They've never come near any of the sheds since, and I'm quite happy that it's working. There's a lot going on in the pictures. The roof's all recycled panels. The floor's all for people who are ripping up their old floorboards. I drove into houses and picked them up. Everything you see in there is free. We've not had to buy anything, which is making a big difference. The Venetian blinds came out of my own house because my wife decided she was changing hers, so I stole the ones. It's been a lot of hard work. It's been a lot of good work. People like Robin and Dennis and Andy, the people I've talked to, have been there for a while and done a lot of it. They're quite good to pick their brains with things. Everybody's got a different way of having a hut, or everybody's got a different way for a hut. I know a lot of councils don't like you having huts on the area. They're saying it's fire risks and all that. I've got smoke detectors. I've got carbon dioxide detectors. I'm trying to do it right. And I think the council, this might be a little bit political, but I think we need to start helping people in allotments a wee bit more. Our car park, during the winter there, one of the older residents, he fell in the car park and he was there for 2 hours, couldn't get up because it was ungritted. We asked the local council, could you put a grit box in, and we were told, no, they're not getting one. No need for it. But our allotments, we're not, I don't know if we're one of the biggest ones, I don't think we are, but we've got 70 or 80 people in here, hail, rain or snow. And it was quite dangerous. It was scary to see the wee man. We actually got to him before, and it was -6 when we found him. And he was in the car park, and it was frightening. And when we actually go into the councillors, they've offered no help whatsoever with it. That might be a bit off track, so I'll get back to talking about the allotment. I'm hoping to plant, if that's the right word, some vegetables this year and grow for eating and giving to some of the locals. I haven't got a clue what I'm going to grow. I haven't got a clue how I'm going to grow it. This is where Robin and his knowledge will come in, because I will be phoning them and I will be asking questions, because I'm quite cheeky that way. I'm not a shy person to go and say, I'll read a book. I'd rather go and ask somebody, because in our allotments, I've asked 10 different people how to grow a carrot, and I've had 10 different ways of growing a carrot. I've watched umpteen videos online, and I'm more confused now about how to grow a carrot than I was about what a carrot, how it grows, if that makes sense. I thought, put a seed in, grow, they're a carrot. No. It's a lot more complicated. I think a lot more people should take it up. I know it's a contentious point about we've not got enough allotments, we've not got enough land. Where do we get the land? I think in this day and age, we have to start using areas that's been abandoned for years and put allotments in. They're lifesavers, mentally and physically. I mean, I've lost 2.5 stone in 3 months working in an allotment. It's cost me nothing apart from sweat. I could have paid a couple £100 to go to a nice gym to do it, but I'm getting more benefit for actually physically digging and shoveling and hammering and building. And I'm just enjoying it. So I don't know what else to say about the huts. There'll be more progress to it, hopefully. But everything you see is being recycled. Everything in the allotment is being recycled. And I think that's going to be the way that I think we should try, rather than just go out and buy a shed or buy a hut or whatever. Make use of what's there. It also cleans up the area and helps make the place look a bit tidier. I don't know what anybody else thinks of that, but that's as far as I can go just now. Right. So thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Thanks very much. Does anyone have any questions for Brian, or comments or observations? It doesn't need to be a question, but we've got a comment in the chat, Brian, just to start us off while people are thinking or while they're writing their own. I've grown forked carrots every year in raised beds with plenty of horticultural grit and straight carrots in containers. I'm not sure. So there's another opinion on
there you go.
Carrot growing. Mary has her virtual hand up. Do you want to just unmute yourself and go for it, Mary?
Hi, thanks. That was very impressive, Brian. I have hundreds of questions, but I'll try and restrict myself to a couple. What kind of design did you use for your hut? what size is it, and what are your foundations based on?
And also, Brian, just before you answer, I've kept the other two photos for in case you want to pull them up while you're answering. So just let me know if you want to move on to them.
If you want to change the next one, because that one you'd have seen, that's the other side of the hut. To answer Mary's question, it's 22 feet long. I know that sounds really bad, but it's 22 foot long by 8 foot wide with a greenhouse attachment to it. The foundations are concrete based. It's all concrete because the land is too soft to put just a bit of board on it and rot away. So I actually borrowed some bags of concrete and made up a concrete base. The ceiling you can see and the walls you can see are air vents. They came from an old bank in Glasgow city centre. I was driving by and they were putting them in a skip. And I thought, wow, what a waste. So I asked the guy, what are you doing with them? And he said, well, they're going to a landfill. They're actually a mile steel. So I said, can I get some of them? And he says, help yourself. So I took 300 of them. Over 2 weeks, I went back doing every single day and filled my car up with as many as I could get. And about what you can see now, I used 110. And there must be another 10 people in our allotments have now got metal base for their sheds. They're all fully insulated with insulation inside them. And I priced them up online looking at them, and they were £65 per panel.
Goodness sake.
They were getting put in a skip. And I just couldn't drive by and let it happen. So that's how it ended up in the panels, and everybody seems to love them and everybody seems to use them. But they were free. It was just a shame they were going to a landfill. I mean, they're actually 2,000 of them back. I'd only get 300 of them. I don't know what happened to the rest. I think they went to landfill or they went to a scrapyard. But that's so I hope that helps.
Mary, you said you had lots of questions. You are very welcome to ask others if you have follow-ups to that one.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, it was taking a minute to unmute. Yeah, thanks very much, Brian. So is it panels that you have at the back as well? Did you make like a wooden frame and attach them to it?
Yeah, I bought the frame from old sleepers that were found lying in the allotment. And I just measured up how high I wanted one side, and I wanted a slope so that I could have the running off, and I just jigged it up and then just added the panels. It's stable. It's never going to fall down, I don't think, because there's enough 2x2 and 4x2s holding it together to keep up any building. And the panels are steel, so they're all screwed in, and it's quite an easy system. It's just square. Well, it's meant to be square, but it's quite long. It's just keep it simple. Just keep the framework simple.
And how long did it take you to do?
To build the shed. That took me 4 weeks.
Okay. Right, that's great. Thanks very much.
Michelle, I can see you've got your hand up there.
Hello. Just to say that I look at that and that is the most intimidating building to build. And I don't know, Brian, if you've ever built anything before. I don't mean to be rude, but you're looking at someone who, on a course, couldn't do a bird box properly. It was all at weird angles and the baby birds would fall out if you used it. So I just cannot imagine where I would start. I mean, imagine you don't have any confidence at all just to put a few bits of wood together, let alone to build something like that, because I just wouldn't know where to begin. So couldn't you give me any advice about a way to imagine you've never done anything like it before, you've got no confidence at all about building anything, and you won't know where to start. Where would you start?
To be fair, this is the first one I've built, and it was the first time I'd actually took the time to. I actually sat down and drew a picture.
Right.
What I thought I could build, and then to be honest, all it is make sure you measure properly. If you want it 6 foot, make sure you do 6 foot, and make sure all your lengths are 6 foot. If you want it 8 foot, do the same. And I've always worked on the principle of, in this world, most things come in 2, 4, 6, and 8 foot lengths. So see if you keep it in 2, 4, or 6 or 8 foot lengths, you always find the wood to fit that gap. And if you can fit that, if you can put 2 bits of wood together at 6 foot, you can put a 6 foot panel on. If you can do it with 4 foot, you can put a 4 foot panel on. And if you put 2 4 foot panels, that should get an 8 foot shed. it's just take your time and do your first piece. Like your back panel is always your first piece. Well, the way I work it is 2 4-foot panels nailed together, framed up, and in the ground. And then you do your side panel the same, your next side panel, and your front panel becomes the same. And you put a window in. What I done was found some old windows lying in the car park, measured them, cut a hole out, and screwed them into place. It's not as hard as it looks. That it doesn't. I think the picture looks a bit better than it actually is. It's a shed. It's done up nice. The framework is basic framework. There's nothing fancy about it. I'm not a joiner. I'm not a builder. I'm just a guy that thought, keep it in perspective at 2 foot, 4 foot. If you look at the panels, every one of them's 4 foot. And they go in 4 foot sections. And that's all I done was concentrate and putting my 2 6-foot bits up, my 4 foot bits in, screw them all together, and that gives you a solid panel. And then I just put cross beams across and done the same at the other side. It's a simple solution.
I'm certainly not a woodworker, of any kind of skill myself, but as thinking about Michelle, you're saying that you're starting with a total non-woodworker's mindset. I remember the day when I realised, when somebody told me why imperial is in 16ths and 32ths, 32nd. And they said it's just because you take something and if you split it in two, if you divide it in the middle, then that's a half. And if you keep going again, you half it, that's a quarter, and you half it again, that's an eighth. And that kind of made sense. But then when they said, and you keep doing it one more time, that's a 16th, and another one is a 32nd. And I went, it's not just some weird, bizarre system. And that kind of helped. It made me think. So woodwork is a bit more about just take something and find a midpoint rather than necessarily always measuring it exactly. That helped me. Anna, I think you had your hand up a second ago as well. Just if you want to go and unmute yourself first before you ask your question.
Unmute, is that me unmuted? Yeah.
Perfect.
I think your hut's great. I recognise those panels. I used to sell suspended ceilings, and that was the things that were used for the vents. But in relation to your carrots, I haven't actually grown carrots because I don't particularly like them. So, What actually I had read somewhere when somebody was growing carrots, everybody seems to grow carrots and they always talk about carrot fly. I actually read somewhere and also saw it in a garden programme that if you grow your carrots at least 12 inches off the ground, carrot fly don't fly any higher than 12 inches. So that was actually stopping the problem of carrot fly. That's one thing. But the other thing, I've actually worked on drawing boards over my life, and everything was millimetres. When I was at college, we had to stop thinking in inches, and we had to start counting in millimetres. And I've worked in the building industry, and that's what they count in, and everything's 25, 50, 75, but 25 is an inch. 50 is 2 inches, and that's the way they all seem to work in the places with the sawmills and all that. So they all now know 300 millimetres is 12 inches, but that's the way they actually measure out all their wood,
Be interested to hear what Robin thinks about the imperial versus metric debate. Robin's going to talk to us about lots of projects that he's had experience doing later. Brian, there's another question in there from Sheena. It says, what's the roof made of? I'm assuming we're talking about the outside this time.
This inside ceilings panels, outside roof is 8x4 plyboard and torch-on felt. Simple as that. Keep it simple. It's easier. There's no fancy beams. It's just 2x2s with 8x4 boards on top and then felted on top of it. You can walk on it, you can run across it, but I wouldn't recommend jumping up and down in it too long.
And then thinking about the roof again as well, there's another question which asks, could you briefly explain how you went about installing the wood burner and any special requirements or precautions for putting one in a wooden shed safely?
There's lots of special requirements for putting I learned that the hard way. I thought, buy a burner, cut a hole in the roof, stick a pipe through and it'll be fine. Then one of my friends works for a fire company and I say to him, come and show me. And then I had to go and buy special boards for putting on the wall. Well, I didn't buy them, I bought them. Then I had to get aluminium frame on it. Then I had to get a steel plate on it. Then I had to put cast around the bolting it. Then I had to cut the ceiling and put in a ground plate. Then I had to put a plate on the inside. As you can see, the silver bits are a plate on the inside. The panels are cut away. It's 4 inches away from any wood. Then on the outside, I had to put another frame with another steel bar across it with a steel chimney. And I've got a smoke detector in and a carbon dioxide detector in. And if I knew it was going to be that high or that hard, I wouldn't have bothered. Don't get me wrong, it's great in the winter, but it will lie there all summer now. It will never get used. But it's worth the effort. It makes the place look good, and it does do its job. You know what I mean? But I wouldn't go just cut a hole in the wall and stick a tube through, because you'll come back in the morning, your thing will be bumped to the ground. You need to make sure you put the steel and the metal covering in and all the protection you can get. You can never have too much. I'm sure Robin will be able to clarify that one. Unless you've not got a burner.
Oh no, I've got a wood burner. I've had a wood burner for about 14 years, but I've actually built a brick wall round it with a gap between the brick wall and the wooden wall, because the brick doesn't transfer heat as much. One of the other guys up at the allotment, he put a burner in, and he had that fire resistant board against the wall, and the heat travelled through and actually set fire to the wood inside his wall. So I'm an ex-firefighter, so he came down to me to ask me my professional opinion, which I says, yeah, your wall's on fire. You're going to have to take the panel off on the outside and put the fire out. You need gap between the burner, well, in my case, the brick, and then the wooden wall. My wooden wall was untouched. It's never caught fire or anything. With the roof, I actually had aluminium, a sheet of aluminium, and I cut it to 18 inches square and put a hole in the middle of it, and it goes through there. And again, it doesn't radiate the heat to the roof. I've got a plastic roof, and it doesn't radiate the heat to the roof at all. So you've got to think in advance. If you're installing them, you've got to think in advance and think of all the worst scenarios that could happen and build accordingly to it. You know, it might take a wee bit longer to fit it in, but it is well worth it, and you will use it in summer. We have, you know, we don't always have brilliant sunshine, so you'll use it in summer because it's nice to sit in front of. It's nice and relaxing to sit in front of and read a book, which I've done many times. So,
so speaking of sorry, I don't mean to cut across you there. I was just thinking, speaking of sitting in front of things, there's one more photo here from Brian, which I'll show before we maybe properly move over to hear from Robin, while I ask the last two questions as well. Alison says, this is brilliant. What's the story behind the jukebox, which you haven't clocked, is there on the right-hand side of this photo? And thinking of, again, of the way it all looks. Martin, oops, sorry, I didn't mean to do that. There's the last photo. Martin has also said, your shed is great, but I can't see any tools. Where do you keep your tools?
Well, we'd have looked in the picture, they'd have seen in the very far end of that picture you had up before that. That's actually my workshop. If he zooms in, you'll actually see all the tools on the wall. They're all on the wall, and they're all in the sheds. They're all in the. That's actually better. That's actually a better toolbox than I've got in the house. All my tools are stored in the shed. They're all there. The jukebox actually is a funny story. I found that in the street. I was driving along Shelton Road, and I seen a jukebox lying in the middle of Shelton Road, and I thought, it's a bit odd. So I stopped, and there was a note on it saying, please help yourself. And the guy had put a wee kind of sweary word on it, why he wanted rid of it, because it stopped working, and he was off with it. So he gave it a kick, and I don't know if you can see the wee centre bit there, it was all broken. So I decided, I'm going to have a look at this. I took it up the road, took it up to my house, plugged it in, nothing. Took it apart, played about with a couple of bits, plugged it in, and it works. So I gave it a wee kind of maintenance thing and repaired the front of it, put some CDs in it, and it was a 10-track CD player. It works absolutely perfect. Lights up beautiful. And then my wife told me to get out of the house. She didn't want the house. So it's
see. And you must have people around to your shed from all over the plots just to look at things and to sit. And
I'm starting to think of charging people to come in, and because George is one of the lot holders, and Harry and David, and every time they get a visitor up, they bring them round to have a look at the shed. And I've just gave them a set of keys and say, on you go. Now I've started the patio. I've got a chess set up because I like playing chess by myself. But no, nobody wants to come in and give me a game of chess. It's getting a bit annoying. They think it's too nice, but it will be used. The rocking chair came through the dump. It's now painted white and it's got new arms on it. The flooring, that was a man was flinging it out because when he got somebody to build it, and because he used 4 different colours, he didn't like it. And I thought, well, I'll use that. It's composite decking. It's weatherproof. It'll last there forever. So you just use what you can find. I mean, I know it looks good and people go, oh, it must have cost. Everything you see there, the only thing that cost me money was my chess set. And that cost me £5 at the barrers. The tree it's on was actually an old tree, get cut down, and I picked it up and brought it in and varnished it and cut it level and put the chess set on it. Use your imagination, people. It's great what you can do. It just makes you feel homely. It makes you feel good when you know there's something there and somebody goes, oh, that looks good. So then you can say, oh, at least somebody else appreciates it, not just me. To be fair, I don't care if anybody else appreciates it. I like it. I mean, so
that was great.
Everybody's got their own idea. I'm sure Robin's hut's going to be completely different from mine.
Was.
Well, that's a good jump across. I'll take the photos down here.
Appointment to go and have a look at once we get time and see what we can.
Aye.
Well, I'll take the photos down here, and then we can all see each other a wee bit more. We don't have any formal photos for Robin's side, but Robin, are you all right to take over from here then? Tell us about what you
certainly.
do.
Yep. My name's Robin Bauer. I have an allotment at Queen's Park, in the park, and I've had it for 28 years. Well, next month it'll be 28 years. The reason I've got an allotment is I grew tomatoes in my daughter's bedroom at the window, and my daughter was 2.5 at the time, so she never really bothered. And but my wife sort of says next year, oh, I also grew cucumbers, and they've got small tendrils, and we had net curtains at the time, and getting tendrils out of net curtains is not a fun job. So I was told by the wife, find some other way to grow something. And I was pushing my daughter in the pram through Queen's Park, and I thought, oh, what's that over there? And here it was an allotment. So in those days, you just asked and you could probably get, they would have some overgrown plot somewhere. So within a week, I had an allotment. I know that sounds ridiculous nowadays with the waiting lists and such like, but at that time, it was just a matter of asking and they'll have one. At the time, I had no cover or anything like that, and obviously I had my daughter in the pram. So if I was digging or working, she's in the pram, and if it rained, there was nowhere to go. So we used to just come home. So I decided I would build a hut, and someone was asking, you know, about huts and things. All you need is 4 corners and wood to go in between it. And I know I'm making it sound very simple, but basically when you look at it, it is, you put 4 posts in the corner, you put wood across it, and a wood on the roof. At the time, it was open front because I just wanted something to stop the rain falling on us. So it was very, very simple. It was just a slope roof, a lean-to roof, slope roof. Over time, I put a front on it because the rain doesn't necessarily drive across it, it drives into it as well, and you still get wet. So I put a front on it. And for many years, it was just a wee small hut. In 2004, I decided to make a greenhouse there. And I built a greenhouse. We got plastic sheeting off of these ad buildings, the ad shield, the bus stop shields, every 6 months they would have to take the plastic sheet off because it was drawn on or scored or marked. So they were taken off, and one of the plot holders got a source to get hold of them. So that made it a lot easier. So it was all plastic all around it. And then moving on a few years, I got hold of a wood burner, a top loader wood burner. And as I say, it's nice to sit in front of, and I used to doze over. And I decided to make it into a hut because I could hear people walking by going, "Shh, Robin's sleeping." So I thought, right, well, I better make it a wee bit more private. So I built a greenhouse elsewhere and just made this into a hut. And basically it stayed the same. That's the way it's been from that's about 2008. So it's not as fancy looking as Brian's. Mine's is just a wee practical hut. It's a mess. It's got slabs on the floor with soil underneath. So, you know, if someone took it over from me, they could just lift the slabs and plant inside it. I like doing woodwork. So some people sort of came up and asked if I would help them with their huts, which I did. And so I ended up building a few huts around the allotments. I've sort of done some proper ones, which are all the wood's bought and paid for, sort of thing. But again, they get expensive. As Brian says, if you can get it for nothing, there's nothing better than getting it for nothing. A lot of building sites, a lot of places, I actually got full length, which is 4.2 meters, which is 16 feet of 2x2s, because they were given the steel shed back to the company and they were taking them out and cutting them up and throwing them away. So fortunately, I've got a Volvo estate, so I can take good lengths of wood in it, and I never say no to wood. If anyone says, "Do you want some wood?" I'll certainly take it. The good thing about having a wood burner is if you can't use it and it's not good enough to use, you can burn it. So, but in the case of building huts, I mean, obviously Brian got all the good stuff and such like, but if you just aim to have a shelter, if you consider it as a shelter at first, doesn't make it sound, because when folks say, "Oh, I'm building a hut," you think you're building a house. You're just building a shelter. That's all it is really a shelter. And again, over time, you can extend it because there's building restrictions. Well, at the allotment, we only have a restriction in the height of the building, and that's only because if it's too tall and too big and stands out too much, and little charmers that walk by end up having to come in to see what it is. So you try and keep it as low key as you can, and you try and make it as tatty as you can, because if you do, folk don't bother it. If it looks fancy and, you know, well done, it will attract folk. Unfortunately, we had a hut burnt down a few years ago because, when it was tall and it looked really well made, and it was really well made. The guy's a joiner, and it took him something like 5 weeks to make it, and unfortunately it got burnt to the ground. So, and I said to him at the time, it's a wee bit high, it's just a wee bit, but it pre-made all the parts, so when it fitted together it was quite high. So hence we had the rule of 10 feet. Anything below 10 feet, relatively, they'll just wander by it. So touch cherry wood, I've been lucky, sort of thing. Concerning building, all you really need is a measuring tape, a pencil, and a saw. And through practice, you'll get a roughly straight line. Although I must admit, I've not managed to get it yet. So I usually use tools to cut them, cordless. Nowadays, you've got cordless tools and drills and such like. When I first started, it was just a hammer and nail, and you just put it together with that. Excuse me a moment, my mouth's getting dry. So a lot of people, it's in the mind that it makes it look really hard and really complicated. As I say, as Brian said, it's 4 walls, basically 4 walls and a roof. For windows, I discovered recently there's a lot of double glazing companies, and usually they take the old windows out and store them out the back until they can go and dump them. And I don't know if any of you are on the south side, but down Dixon Blazes, there's a place there, and they have a big yard with all the windows and such like. And when I asked if I could have some of them, by all means, help yourself, because it means they don't need to get rid of them. And you get lovely, good double glazed units. Not always in the frame, but you always get nice, big double glazed units. So the likes of that, doors, it's just 4 bits of wood with a bit of wood with wood nailed onto it. It doesn't have to be anything fancy or anything like that. Again, some of the people up there, double glazed French doors. So we fitted them. So it's really, I'm not saying it's incredibly easy to make. You've got to have you're not wanting it to fall on you at any given time. But basically, it's an easy thing to make as a shed or a hut, a shelter, whatever you want to call it, sort of thing. I can't really think of anything else. As I say, I don't really have any pictures myself that I could show you. I wish I had been a wee bit better organised, but I'm not really that organised. So if anyone wants to ask any questions or anything like that, have any points that they'd like to bring up, feel free.
Can I have some double glazing for my shed?
Certainly. Is there anyone else that'd like to ask any questions? Anyone else that's starting to look at building a hut or maybe or a shelter, if you want to call it that? Pallets is another good thing as well. I saw a beautiful hut that someone built that they made it out of pallets, and I actually have a name for my allotment. I've got a name plate up, and it's called Casa Pallet, which is House of Pallets, because that's what originally I used, was pallets. So you can, some good wooden pallets. So that's always another thing to do as well.
I had a question I was going to ask about pallets, and now you're saying that. Are you talking about people who take the pallet as it is and maybe do some modifications to it and use like the pallet as a construction unit, or did they bust it all apart and use the slats separately?
They use the slats. There's a thing you can get it. It's in Tool Station. It's actually for lifting slabs, but basically what it is, it's 2 prongs like that with a slight curve on it. And if you try to take a pallet apart using a hammer, you'll break it up and such like. But if you what you do is you put it underneath, just pull on it, and it lifts the nails straight up. So you can get the pallets, you can get the wood off quite easily. I make a lot of compost bins for some of the folk up there using these pallets. So yeah, well, it is a bit easier when it's wet, but it's better getting dry wood. It takes a long time to dry the pallets. Someone had just written up there saying it's easier to take apart when it's wet.
Can I ask you, Robin? I was going to use pallets for doing one of my walls, but the health and safety guy told me not to use pallets for indoor like a hut because some of them are so much chemicals in them they can be quite dangerous. That's why I didn't go and use them.
Well, I don't know. I don't know about that. I couldn't say yes or no to that. But most of the pallets I've used, basically pallets is offcuts of wood. It's just wood as they trim the trees and such like, because you get them all shapes, and some of them even still got bark on them. So you can take the pallets apart. A lot of them is just fresh wood. You know, it's not treated at all. You know. Someone's saying their heat treated pallets are okay with HT symbol on the side. Well, that's new to me, but again, it all depends. It's just obviously some of the ones you can get some that are oily and dirty and things like that, but so you don't use them. But most of the wood I've had, you can get beautiful white wood. Some of it's hard to cut, some of it's very hard. You know, if you drill holes, you have to drill holes in it, because it splits and breaks very easily. But there's the heavy duty pallets are actually hardwood, you know, exotic hardwood that are strange and very heavy, you know. So the pallets are very good. I think it was the roughneck demolition and lifting bar. It's a roughneck one. I don't think it's a demolition and lifting bar, but it's for moving slabs, for getting under the edge and moving slabs. But a lot of the wood is very good quality. Well, for what we need it, you know, you couldn't make furniture out of it, but you can certainly make compost bins and houses. So.
I see Judy has her hand up, but Judy, I wonder if you'll forgive me if I go to the question that's been in the chat, because I think we overlooked it. There was a question there that says, how much maintenance do you need to do on your shed every year? I'm not sure whether that was directed at specifically the one we saw from Brian, or if that's just a general question about sheds.
I've renewed one wall. I've had to renew some spars on the roof, but in general, I give it a coat of that clear coat every year, or I actually now use the green water-based paint, and it keeps it good for a year. Obviously, around where it's sitting near the soil, it gets a wee bit softer, but I ignore them. I just paint the bits that I see, and it keeps it pretty well maintained. But it's a yearly thing, you know. But again, that's what winter's for, is maintaining things and renewing things. So,
well, hopefully mine doesn't need any maintenance for a year. I'll let you know.
Well, yours should last a few years first, but eventually it will, like everything, just wood, rain, wind on it and such. Our plot's south facing, so it gets, believe it or not, it gets a lot of sunshine on it, sort of thing, and that degrades it a wee bit. But again, just paint it.
I think that's going to be part of the fun, the maintenance part.
Well, it is. It keeps an eye on it, and it keeps it built. It keeps it up. So, you know, as I say, I replaced the actual front wall because, again, round the corner they were lifting floorboards out of mosque, and so I grabbed as many of them as I could, and that's what I built the wall with. You know, the folks saying about the pallets, in general, if you go and ask if you can get the pallets, they'll say yes and give you more if you need it. The ones that are coloured blue actually have a deposit on it. So usually they'll sort of say, take what you want, don't take the blue ones, because they're the ones that they get their money back on. Yes, we have. If you've got a roof, you must have a gutter on it, partly to keep the water off the wall, but secondly is for a water butt, which in the past few years has been well used because we've had a long period of dry spell, and I got through most of it using my water butts. I've got 7 water butts on my plot.
You're sure.
Well, 2 of them connected, the rest of them in other roofs, and I had enough. Yeah, well, someone's saying Facebook Marketplace, Gumtree and such like, it's good for it. If you go to any place, you'll find a pallet line outside. Any business, you'll find a pallet line outside it, and they'll thank you for taking it away. You know, obviously go in and ask, don't just take, but they will thank you for taking it away. You know, because they just, I will help yourself, because that means they don't have to do it. Sorry, I think someone's waving his Galaxy Tab, yeah?
Oh, sorry,
Anna, it's me.
All right.
Okay, I was just going to say, a lot of the shops that you see driving up and down any roads have all got their pallets sitting outside every time they have deliveries, you know, even pubs and things like that. They've got them all over the place.
Yes.
And
these people would want you to take them away because they've got to pay to get rid of it. So if you go up and tap on the door, as I say, I always say, you got to ask, you can't just take. But if you go up and tap on the door, they're more than grateful that you take them away. You know, one guy gave me 4 pallets, and he says, do you want me to go around the back and check for some more? And I says, no, I've got enough, thanks. So they're wanting rid of them. That means they don't have to pay for it, and it saves them money. Plus, you can reuse it. And if you do have a wood burner, you can burn some of it as well. That's the other handy side of it. So you're covered everywhere.
Judy, you've been patiently waiting with your virtual hand up. Do you want to come in next?
I can't remember, Robin, but do you heat your greenhouse? And if so, how do you do it? And then tell us about your chickens and your chicken coops.
Well, yes. No, I have a heated area in my greenhouse, which is a bench, and it has a metal plate underneath. And the metal plate has a space between it again. You don't keep it right against the wood. And I have a small paraffin burner underneath. It's the frost-free one, the wee round one. It's about that size. And it's a frost-free. It's to keep things frost-free. And it heats the atmosphere inside. And it heats the bottom of it enough to grow, take shoots for chrysanthemums and dahlias. It gives enough heat for that. My chickens, well, that's another part of the hut that I built. I've got a chicken run on the end of it, and I have 9 chickens at the moment. So, and they're starting to lay eggs, I'm proud to say now. We actually, 2 weeks ago, we had to buy eggs. So it's a bit soul destroying when you're feeding chickens and they're not giving you anything. So, no, chickens that have leghorns, light Sussex, I'm sure I'm saying these and they mean absolutely nothing to you. If you think of foghorn leghorn out of the cartoon, that's leghorn. And they are actually like that, you know. They're right stroppy animals. I have light Sussex, which is white with a nice Icelandic collar round their necks. I have the ordinary battery chickens, and I have what's a light blue, which is just a grey colour one. And they keep me with eggs throughout the year, except winter. So, but yeah, pallets, you know, and again, if you have that tool, what it does is instead of snapping the bits off, it lifts them and lifts the screws. You've got to de-nail it, but that's a lovely thing to do on a sunny day, sitting in your chair, is taking hammer nails out of bits of wood that you're going to use later on. It's a nice way to pass the time. So
sorry, my computer totally froze on me there, and it wouldn't let me click the unmute button. So I was about to WhatsApp Chris to say, back up.
I was just about to step in, but you
Thanks.
cut me.
There are a few people with their hands up, and what I'm going to suggest is that since we're at 9 o'clock, what we'll do is I'll do the formal wrap up, and if anybody wants to hang back and ask more questions or answer more questions, then we can do that, but I wouldn't expect that people should feel beholden to stay here for that. So just for the benefit of the recording, I'll say thanks very much. We'll all stay here if you want to in a second, but thanks very much to all of our speakers, both of our speakers, Brian and Robin. It's been fascinating. I've got shed envy. I'd love to say that I'm going to go try and do it, but I'm not. I know that I'll fail if I try. I'll just remember that yours were great and it'll be inspiring. So everybody else, if you have to head off now, if you've got other things to do, enjoy the rest of your night. We have more FebFest events happening for the rest of the week up until Sunday, including a virtual walk around a new site. And tomorrow's is about Potato Day stories, and Friday's is about birds and bees, literally about birds and bees on an allotment. So maybe we'll see you then. So I'll stop the recording now, and thanks for coming along.